This has been quite a unit. These were some tumultuous years, and the world was upside down. And here is your assignment for this unit. And it's true. This assignment is so much on the honor system I can't even begin to tell you. What I can tell you is that you are brilliant. Your ideas are brilliant. Your ideas matter. And your thoughts are important. So I hope that you will read this assignment. You will do as described in the instructions below, and that you will take some time for thoughtful introspection for this assignment. The good news is that all of your ideas and thoughts are 100% A. The only deductions that you will experience will be for spelling and punctuation. Isn't that wonderful? I hope you're inspired. I hope this has been a good unit for you, and let's go over the instructions for this assignment together. First, settle in, make yourself a nice hot cup of tea, and set aside an hour of quiet time and read this modern article. Yes, I know, I understand. I'm busy too, but this is the work. This is the course that you are taking. This is an important aspect of this very short period of time that we get to study. You have two choices for this article. You can read it to yourself, or you can read along as I read the article out loud by clicking on this link and watching the little YouTube tutorial of me reading this article. Now make sure that you can still see the screen, because I want you to get used to the language. I want you to get used to reading article information about factual events. I think it's important that you be able to do that, particularly given where you're headed in your studies. When you've read the article, which will take about an hour, maybe just a little bit less, my recording of the reading of it I think is 58 minutes, and it's all interesting information. I want you to walk away from your computer, walk away from your phone, walk away from everything. And I'd like you to spend about 20 minutes thinking about this era. We've been studying it a little bit. You've listened to about an hour and a half of lecture on this particular period of American history. You've looked at some of the literature. You've chosen a topic to write about the era from the beginning to this particular period. And you've given some thought to this, and I want you to take about 20 minutes. How is something like this even possible? How could that many people find pleasure, excitement, and entertainment from watching people hang? Now, it's not the first time in history hangings and beheadings and guillotines and all sorts of inhumanity have been sports since, well, forever. A few years ago, the Hunger Games took on this issue. Now, The Handmaid's Tale exposes man's inhumanity to man. New on Netflix is this series, Hitler's Circle of Evil, that examines how this architect of cruelty weaved a web of deception and lies. This may become a course of study that interests you, perhaps for the wild card essay. Whether you're fascinated by this matter of base mortality or repulsed by the acts of men, the facts remain that this stain on American history and the literature that reflected the time happened. It's not fact. It's not alternative facts. These are the facts. Take a walk. Talk a little bit to your Cyber Cafe group if you want. You'll see a link for that in the discussion boards. It's optional. You don't have to talk to your Cyber Cafe group about it, but you can. Make sure that you keep it all legitimate and all professional. Exchange thoughts and ideas, or just meditate on this in your own time. You all know my theory. And I believe I have a very simple theory about all this. People need to feel that they matter. And all too often, folks feel unacknowledged, invisible, and irrelevant. A woman my age the other day said she just couldn't figure out her life because everything's over. Her kids are grown. They're gone. They don't talk to her very often. She feels invisible in a room. She feels that she has no voice. And she's my age. I get it. I don't feel that way, but I understand how somebody could feel that way. And when folks feel that way, it's not good news. And when the hierarchy need for family, love, and belonging is denied, remember this Maslow's theory. This will help you all the way through your studies, and I hope that it'll help you in your own personal life, because this one is the stickler. Belonging and need for love. You know, I belong to several different peer groups, and when I walk in, I have that wonderful sense of love and belonging. Now, the folks of Salem were not afforded such pleasures, were they? In their search for purity, such joy was forbidden. In my simple opinion, when a culture devolves in that way, when anybody that dares to think differently from the people in control, for somebody to have an idea that doesn't fit into the box of the people who are in control of the culture, when those people are chided, made fun of, humiliated, called names, called nicknames, it isn't good. And that opens the door for all sorts of base actions. What was unthinkable becomes thinkable. What could never ever happen in an enlightened culture happens. What somebody would say that you would think, this could never be all right for somebody to say something like that, it becomes the norm. What seems criminal and unforgivable becomes the accepted norm, and a new culture forms to support the outrageous. And that brings us to the assignment for this 1650 to 1750 year unit. Let's take a look at the assignment. After you've pondered this era, I'd like you to click the blue Submit tab at the top of this assignment page. You'll see a text box. You're going to add, of course, your name, course, date, and word count. Remember that when it's all over, add that word count when you're finished. Check that when you double check. Center and title your little mini essay. Now you're going to drop down 2 spaces and you're going to share your thoughts in a complete paragraph with an indented first line and about 8 or 9 sentences of your thoughts about man's inhumanity to man. This will be similar to a journal entry, but with your real weighted thoughts. Only you and I will see this part of the submission. You cannot fail this exercise, but you will be deducted spelling points and punctuation errors, so proofreading will be necessary. Next, drop down 2 spaces and add a centered image that represents the good news, man's incredible ability to care. Drop down 2 spaces and write a second paragraph that states your hope for the future of mankind. Y'all, we all have to have hope for the innate goodness of mankind. Because again, this is my opinion, and that's why this first paragraph I want you to give me your opinions. Because my opinion is that in this same paradigm which we've seen in Maslow, men and women, regardless of any factors, regardless of any IQ tests, regardless of any amount of money that they've been able to make, regardless of any of those external factors, men and women who find positive ways to meet physiological needs, who attend to their own safety needs by taking good care of themselves, who have the ability to love, to feel that they belong somewhere, and to give the gift of making others feel that they belong. People who find ways to make their esteem needs met by helping others. I grew up in Alaska. We left Texas and we moved to Alaska. And in Alaska to this day, in the wintertime, there are men who drive around town in big pickup trucks with chains and with all kinds of spare tires and all sorts of pulleys and ways of helping people get out of ditches. That's what they do. I'm not even kidding. I've seen it and I've experienced it, and I've talked to the people who do that. They drive around town looking for people to help because they don't want somebody to die in a snowdrift. That is an incredible thing, in my opinion. That's esteem. The cognitive needs, the needs like you're doing right now. You took on a steep learning curve when you took this course, didn't you? This isn't easy. This period of literature is not all hearts and roses and poetry and flowers. This is challenging. It's always been challenging to me, and I know it's challenging to you. The language is Middle English. The thoughts, the ideas, what in the world? It's challenging. It's a learning curve. Personally, I love a learning curve. I want to learn. I like cognitive needs. The aesthetic needs, making sure that there's a safe place to live, that others are cared for. Self-actualization, getting on that learning curve, being honest, and writing something that you're proud of. And then the transcendence into higher levels of thinking and meditation and consideration of others. People, this pyramid didn't come out of nothing. It's because this is what people are aiming for. And when people are on this quest, on this pyramid, I believe that there's a capacity for tremendous love and understanding and compassion, regardless of all the external factors. So your second paragraph is going to state in the same thing, indented paragraph, indent the first line, write about 8 or 9 sentences on what you see as the good news. Only this time, I want you to add at least one centered image. Now, you've had experience, and you can do this using Flickr. You can go through the process of uploading a picture to your account in Canvas. You would call the help desk if you got stuck on that. But that's something you might do if you had a picture that you particularly wanted to add that you couldn't find on Flickr. And then you are going to proofread your work, add your word count, and submit. I've got a little example. Let me show you real quick. Okay, so in this example, I've got my name, course, date, word count, and this is my first paragraph, and I've just added that little jumbo text. I read these facts, how this happened. And so I'm going to just write my thoughts about how this happened. Now I'm going to drop down the 2 spaces, and I'm going to include my image, which is an image from Woodstock. And I'm going to write my thoughts about the good news that I see. And this is what I wrote. I'll read it real quick. This was my generation. Cool kids went to Woodstock while countless young men were drafted to Vietnam. The world was upside down. What could not be denied to anyone was the sheer numbers of young people who took to the streets. No, I didn't go to Woodstock. I sat with my peace signs on the courthouse step. Day after day we took to the streets to advocate for peace and love. And change happened because we could not be ignored. And the world seemed silent for a time. With the advent of cell phones, many friends from my generation fear that the youth of today is addicted to a cyber world that doesn't really exist. Who will stand up for the future, we wonder. And we sigh at the seeming apathy, just as our parents sighed when we were young and noisy. Meanwhile, the world is upside down. But then, on March 24th, 2018, something happened that made me cry. Approximately 2 million young people and adult advocates took to the streets for the March for Our Lives march. I'm inspired and have supported that cause since. With an election coming, the votes can be tallied any way they like. But as with my generation and the new youth movements, nobody can ever deny sheer numbers of people showing up to vote with signs and messages of hope. That concludes this tutorial on the assignment for 1650 to 1700.